Hi, it's Norman Kochnick here. I'm obviously from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnick. And I've got Chris Fern here yet again. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
With that same hat that I still keep forgetting the name. Something in Vine. Hollywood and Vine. Was there something on?
Sevenoaks Vine. You're not going to say this every time, Norman, are you?
We'll need to get maybe the owner of that club or somebody that's coming.
At least I remember you're from Bondi Beach in Australia.
What? I'm from Bondi Beach. All right. So now we're going to talk today. We've had some 3 episodes already, or parts to the series on the player movements in the IPL. We've clearly talked about the Chennai Super Kings. Obviously, then we looked at Delhi Capitals, and thirdly, we looked at the Kings 11 Punjab. Now we're moving on to the 4th team in the series, and that is the Kolkata Knight Riders, which I always love the name Kolkata Knight Riders. I think of the famous Knight Rider car. That's what I always think of. That's my little connection. But they're obviously 2-time winners of the IPL. They've got, I think it's 12 and 14, and they also narrowly missed out in last year's playoff spot. So that's something that after losing on the net run rate to Royal Challengers Bangalore, that's quite a frustrating loss, that one. They were looking pretty good from what I can remember. So the way that they're looking at the IPL 2021 mini auction, we'll call it that, which will be taking place on the 18th of February, which is only a short time away. They've only released 5 players, it seems, and they've kept the main structure, the backbone or the core of their unchanged team, and that is relatively unchanged. So over to you, Chris, to go through the squad.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've looked at 3 now, how you can tell by obviously how much money they've got or how much they've released. And I think the Kings 11 we looked at last episode had released about 15 players, whereas, Kolkata have released 5. So it's quite clear that they're fairly happy with the squad that they've got, and obviously only narrowly missed out on the playoff spot last season on net run rate to the Royal Challengers. So it's quite clear that they're fairly happy with the squad. I always feel like with the KKR that they slightly underachieve. If you look at the stats from the whole tournament last year, the highest run scorer they had was Shubman Gill, and he was 12th on the list in the whole IPL. And their highest wicket taker was Varun Chakravarthi. I hope I've pronounced that right. And he was 9th on the list with 17 wickets. So, if you want to be competing to win or to at least get in the playoffs, you've got to have blokes higher than 9th and 12th in the respective wickets and runs tally, haven't you? So I think that they'll be slightly disappointed with Pat Cummins. I know he's been retained and rightly so, in terms of one of the best in the world, and I think he was the most expensive overseas signings ever. So I think they'll be slightly disappointed that he didn't lead their attack a bit more, and maybe this year they'll be looking more from him, if that makes sense.
Well, he's had a pretty heavy schedule of tests and but mind you, with the Australian South African series being postponed, I can't see that happening prior to the IPL now, to be honest with you. They might try and squeeze him before the June so-called World Test Championships. But yeah, that's not going to be on for a while, because I think the South African situation is getting worse rather than better.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look now at the squad, please.
Yeah, so the squad, Dinesh Karthik, he's probably been in the IPL since the first episode of the first series, hasn't he? I mean, he's just been a stalwart, pretty solid. Probably over the hill slightly in terms of his best years, but still a pretty consistent performer. Andre Russell, I mean, not much more to be said about him. Sort of the West Indian big show, really, isn't he? Just brilliant. Didn't have an overly impressive series last year. I think that he only scored 117 runs at 13, which I think would be slightly disappointing from a KKR perspective. But certainly in terms of an X factor, they've got him in Andre Russell and can bowl as well. I've seen him play in the Sri Lankan Premier League, and it just seems that maybe he's getting on a bit, or his body he's not quite athletic and as fit as he used to be. But maybe that might just been he had a knock in Sri Lanka or something. So hopefully he can come back with a bang in the IPL, which a lot of the Kolkata fans will be expecting. Run for the rest of the squad. Kamlesh Nagarkoti, Kuldeep Yadav, obviously the Chinaman who's hotly tipped to play in the first test this week against England. and Chinamen are sort of X factor players, aren't they? Really, they can often leak runs, but they're different, and that's something that a lot of sides are probably jealous that they've got access to Yadav.
The only thing is that he didn't get a Guernsey in any of the Test matches in Australia, and admittedly they've done fantastically well without him there. Yeah. That was somewhat of a scratch from the head scenario. I don't know why they didn't use him. They didn't need to in the end, granted, but
I think that when it comes to Yadav, I think that he's going to be probably a Stuart McGill type player for India. I think he'll play probably most of his cricket in India. The one thing that, and he hasn't played a lot in England, and when he has done, he's leaked runs. I think that on flatter, bouncier wickets in Australia and England, he's not going to get as much spin, and therefore can probably go at 4 or 5 and over, which is a Chinaman / leg spinner equivalent. Those guys do that, and historically only probably Shane Warne has been the one to really over control Anil Kumble, and that's probably why he didn't play in Australia, is because they couldn't afford to go for runs out to keep it tight, and that's why they did so well in the Test matches, is that all their bowlers kept it pretty tight, and a leg spinner or a Chinaman's a luxury bowler, isn't it? And if you're leaking runs 5 and over the other end and not taking loads of wickets, it's amazing how quickly the scores go up, isn't it? So
true. All right. Okay, so
Lockie Ferguson sort of broke onto the scene the last couple of years, really, with express pace. I mean, he's probably arguably the quickest in the world, often sporting a sort of a Merv Hughes style moustache as well, which is always great to see. But I fully expect him and Pat Cummins to lead that attack with the likes of Russell to back up, and then Varun Chakravarthy as well. Running through the rest, Nitish Rana, left-hand batter, I believe, gives it a whack, and he's sort of a Ravi Jadeja, Shikhar Dhawan style, sort of Hollywood, sort of got a great look, and has sort of got the tattoos. I think if I've got the right person, which I think I have, he's sort of their Hollywood superstar, isn't he? He's got the look, and he's certainly a headline star performer for the KKR. I'm sure they'll be looking for him to really kick on this year. He scored 350 runs last year at sort of mid-20s. I expect they'll be expecting big things this year in the middle order from him. Prasid Krishna, Rinku Singh and Sandeep Warrior, Shiv Mavi. Don't know a lot about those guys, obviously young sort of Indian guys coming through the system. We'll obviously be, as I said, anyone watching or listening who's got some insights on those guys, feel free to sort of let us know what you thought of those guys and whether they'll play a key role this year. Then we obviously come on to Shubman Gill, leading run scorer last year for the KKR. I think that they'll be expecting more of him this year. 440 runs, which was 12th in the overall. I know it's obviously very close, but I think that they'll be expecting more from him this year. Especially after breaking.
Did he play all the games?
Yeah, played 14 games. So did very well. Averaging 34 as an opening bat. You're not unhappy with that. But I think that KKR to compete with the likes of the Delhi Capitals and the Mumbai Indians need to have guys further up the list in runs and wickets, and I think that Gill is going to be their standout guy to do that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Sun Nareen has been retained. I think that he burst onto the scene probably nearly 10 years ago now. I would assume he's been around a while, hasn't he?
Still a very good bowler.
Still a very good bowler.
And can bat too.
Since he got called for throwing, I think he had to go and remodel his action. I think that his mystery, aura and presence has gone down a little bit. I don't think he's the bowler that he was. Batting wise, he's this luxury bloke that they see as just someone that can come in and whack it at the top, but has struggled. I've been watching the T10 a little bit, and he's got 3 golden ducks in a row. So he's on a bit of a down.
How do you judge form on a T10, Tom? How do you judge form? You got 10 overs. I mean, for God's sake, you're going to be playing some bizarre shots from the absolute first ball, aren't you? So I'm not surprised golden ducks occur very often.
Yeah, of course, but it's still something that he'd be disappointed in. And for the KKR, it's a massive risk when you've got a guy like him who could get 50 off 12 balls, and he has done before. But if every other innings he's getting naught, you don't want to get off to a bad start against good sides, and it puts a lot of them pressure on your Owen Morgans, your Gills, your Russells, your Ranas coming in at 10 for 2 or 3 for 1. It's added pressure. The best sides in the IPL, I think, are the sides that have good solid opening bats who get off to good starts and really pile it on. Why did KK Kings 11 last year struggled a bit on the bowling front, but they had a top 3 who averaged over 40 or 35 or 40, and that's why they came back into that tournament, is because they're batting, I think. So
all right, so let's go on with the side. Let's move on with the side.
Owen Morgan looks like he's going to be captaining the side. I mean, probably the best. I'm going to put my neck on the line for the impact he's had on that England side since the 2015 World Cup in New Zealand. I'd say he's probably the best white ball captain in the world. I think he's better than the Kohli as a captain, just for the way that he's changed that side and changed the sort of ethos and the
vision. 2019 World Cup, which they won, you would argue by default, against New Zealand. I was there that day. Were you there that day?
I wasn't there that day. No.
I was down at finally the non-members end, underneath the JP Morgan press centre there. Yeah, and there was a man who had a heart attack about an over out from that last ball, and there was a commotion with ambulancemen and stretchers and what have you, and he was being taken away within my eye line, and I had to move away a bit and watch it, but it was still spectacular. Yeah. All right, John.
No, I think that the fact that he's captaining a IPL side with the likes of Kartik in it, with the likes of Gill, younger, good, proper Indian players, I think is testament to how good they think he is, and I think that England were disgraced in 2015, and so and they'll be expecting big things from him. I think he was their leading 6 hitter last year in the competition with 24 sixes in 14 knocks, averaged 42. It often seems to me that he bats a little bit lower than he should. I think he often comes in at 4 or 5, and I think he's your best player. Get him in at 3. Let him hit.
I don't know why he does that. He claims to be a finisher, but then if he goes from the start, he can finish well anyway. So
I just think in 2020 cricket, you need your best players to be facing as many balls as possible, and in my opinion, he's probably the best batter at the moment. Gill will probably come through and he's going to be a very good player, but Owen Morgan is arguably one of the best one-day batsmen in the world, let alone in the KKR setup. So I'd like to see him sort of get up the order and play a bigger role, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Pat Cummins, spoken about, speaks for himself. He's going to lead that bowling attack, and then Rahul Tripathi, Varun Chakravarthi, Ali Khan and Tim Seifert make up the rest of the squad. So they've got a pretty well-rounded squad. I think they'll look at a few X-Factor guys to come in, and if you look at the guys that they've released, Siddharth, Nikhil Naik, Sidhesh Lad, obviously young 3 Indian guys who have failed to make an impression there, and then Chris Green and Tom Banton. Is Chris Green?
Well, Chris Green, not unlike Daniel Sams, has certainly got a high standing in Australia. And Tom Banton, he's not a bad state player. He's played a bit of one, but obviously, he obviously hasn't done that well. Not surprised.
I think that if you look at who they've got available, and you can tell from their squad, they're obviously quite happy with the bones of the squad. They've got 7 slots remaining in the auction with 1 overseas, and they've probably just taken a view that Chris Green and Tom Banton, if they can only bring 1 overseas in, which I'm surprised they've kept Tim Seifert. I think he's a Kiwi. I'm fairly sure that he's a wicketkeeper as well, so maybe they set him as backup to Kartik. I'm assuming that Kartik will take the gloves, so I'm assuming that's why that Seifert's probably retained his spot over Chris Green and Banton, just because he's a backup keeper. And they've probably just taken a view. We've got 1 overseas slot left. Lockie Ferguson's going to play. Russell's going to play. Morgan's going to play. Cummins is going to play. That's probably the 4 overseas slots. I've missed out on Ryan there. Ali Khan, I think, is an overseas bowler as well. And they're probably just viewing that they just need someone to come in and back up.
But in the commentary about players that are looking to be maybe picked up on, they've targeted virtually all
batters, I think.
Overseas players. They've got Mujib Rahman, who's come from the club we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Aaron Finch, Jason Roy, who's been floating around. There's a couple that intrigue me. David Milan and Cameron Green. I'd pick up one of those two in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that they've got three very good spinners already in their squad. They've got Kuldeep and Varun Chakravarthi are probably going to be. If you've got two very good spinners that are both Indian, that's pretty good. That's
a good position there. Cameron Green certainly has come into contention now that he's played Test cricket in Australia and he's got a bit of prominence. Although he still hasn't taken a wicket for Australia, I don't think yet, but he's bowled well.
I just see it with the KKR. If you look at their squad, they've already got Russell, they've already got Sun and Nareen, they've already got Pat Cummins, who and Ali Khan, although he can give it a whack. I've been watching the T10. I don't see them going for Cameron Green. I don't think that they need another all-rounder. I think that Andre Russell and Nareen and Cummins are filling that role. I don't think they need a spinner. If they've already got Nareen as backup to Kuldeep and Chakravarthi, I think I'm getting the pronunciation right there. I see them going for Finch or for Milan. I think that Aaron Finch is just weird. He gives it a whack, but has been released obviously by, I think it was RCB. I'd be very surprised if David Milan doesn't get picked up by someone. He's the number one T20 batsman in the world. Has come in for England in a side that he probably shouldn't be in the side if you look at his record or his. I think he's getting picked in that side just because he keeps scoring massive runs. I think that he's just totally undroppable. And I think that initially when he came in was probably because Hales was on the naughty step, and Jason Roy might have been injured or Bairstow was out, whatever it might have been. And you look at that England side and you think that Milan's the slot that one of these guys would come in for, but he's just.
Where was Milan before?
I don't think he's ever played. I think that he's come out of the. I think he's come out. I think, and I might be. I think he only made his T20 debut for Middlesex 3 or 4 years ago. I don't think he's a 2020 player historically. I think that he's just made a name for himself, and I think that with Owen Morgan captaining that side, KKR, I think that he'll be him or Jason Roy that they go for, and I think that they'll pick up Milan. I think they'll go for him.
Well, David Milan, a couple of years ago, he was at the Middlesex training session that I was a part of.
Yeah.
And when we played there, we were obviously part of Middlesex for the day when they played the game, and he was incredible bloke, and he looked fantastic in the net. So, yeah, he's got more aggression than we've been giving him credit for. So, great addition. All right, is that what we've gone through now?
I think that's probably, as I said, I think that then KKR clearly aren't looking to massively overhaul anything, but looking at their squad, if they can add a David Milan in there to open the batting with Shubman Gill, with Morgan and Kartik and Russell in there, then that's looking like a pretty good side, and Rana as well. So I think they'll be expecting more out of their superstars. I think that they'll want to see people pushing up the wickets and runs column. But I like KKR. I think that they're probably the most glitzy, glamorous sort of sides, aren't they, in terms of kit, in terms of name, and cheerleaders is obviously always a nice addition, viewing point of view. But it'll be interesting to see. I think that they'll target a Finch, Roy, or Milan for me.
Milan's the one that stands out for me. So
agree.
Effectively, it's going to be interesting this year because obviously Mumbai Indians are always going to be the team to beat, you would argue. But KKR and also Kings 11 Punjab, both, to me, if they get their act together, could be strong rivals at this stage.
I think that's why it's such a good competition. I think it's where the English 2020, because we do it in counties and have 17, 18 sides, I think that's where the Big Bash and the IPL are always very competitive, is because they have a smaller competition. So the players are condensed into 7 or 8 sides. In the IPL, although the Mumbai Indians have always historically done well with CSKA historically, not so much recently. You think that any of these sides, we look at all the squads and you think, any of these sides can win it if they turn up. So
we've got 2 more coming in next year though. There's Pune and the Deccan. I think they're the 2
for 2022 or
22. Yeah.
Okay.
Pune, I think they're going up to 10. I think at least 9, if not 10. Okay. That'll be interesting. So, all right. Thank you very much, Chris. That was well done. So we've gone through today the Kolkata Knight Riders, the KKR, which joins. Now they're the 4th part of this series of 8. So we've got 4 more to go. And Mumbai Indians is number 5. That's next off the ranks. So those Mumbai Indian fans, next episode's for you. So this was episode 4 or part 4 of the series of player movements in the IPL, all about the IPL. This is Norman Kochnick for Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnick, with Chris Vernon as well. We'll see you soon. Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnick. Take it easy, guys.